We have been having some great weather, which means it's also time to get those pretty planters out.
So with us today, Auntie Ashley Morgan from Unglued is going to show us how to make some pots and planters.
Yes. Thank you for joining me today here and having me on. These are all ones that I've personally wanted to try, and so it always gives me a good excuse coming on here to actually make them. And so I hope you'll find inspiration of many different ways you can personalize planters and make them work for your home decor. So our first one is we're going to talk briefly about concrete planters. This has been around for a while now, but you're seeing them even more in home decor stores. You can buy them, but you can make your own too. And what's beautiful about all these projects is you can make them on a much larger scale than what we've got going on here. So Christy is holding up one that is made with rockite concrete. The only place I find this concrete in town is at Shields Ace Hardware on 13th Avenue. It turns out really nice and smooth.
I like that.
I feel like that's kind of like a more high-end feeling of a concrete planter.
Yes.
It's a little more expensive. It's usually used for patching walls and that kind of thing, but you can also use it for a lot of art projects, which is fun. To your other side, though, that larger one that I made is with Quickcrete, and so that is normal concrete you can find in hardware stores, but it turns out a lot rockier and more rough looking, and it has more of those pebbles in it. So still could be cool, especially for like an outdoor planter, but we're gonna work with rockite.
Okay.
So in front of you here is 1 cup of rockite, and then you're gonna add this little bit of water, the whole thing, and that's just a little over 1/4 cup. And then you might need to kind of hold the bucket down and really like mix it well.
Get it.
Just really go for it. We want all the concrete to get wet. And what's nice, what I try to aim for is that it's somewhat pourable, but it's not like super liquidy yet. So it still can be poured out of there using your popsicle stick. And with a concrete planter, you can use a variety of containers as your mold. I like to use ones that are disposable because most likely you're going to be ripping them off. We've tried like the Pinterest idea of like spraying cooking oil in your planter base to like do it, and I have not found success with that. That's what I tried to do with my Quickcrete one. Perfect.
That's a good consistency?
That is, yeah.
Okay.
It could be a little bit thicker, but we're going to go with this because we have that going on, and it will still work just fine.
This is happening.
You can pour it into our bigger container. I chose this one because the inside of it is really smooth, and it's the same one that I used for our example one there. And we'll just kind of dump as much concrete as we're going to be able to get out of there. And then I chose just a smaller cup we had on hand. This one's ribbed, but it doesn't really matter because it's going to go inside the concrete. I just wanted the outside to be nice and smooth.
Right.
And then once you're pretty happy with that, we can
happy.
Yeah, we're happy.
I'm happy.
Yay! You're gonna just shove that in there, and you're gonna let the concrete go up the sides, which you won't be able to see on TV, but we do have one that I'll show you here as an example. And so if you don't want your 2 cups to be floating at the same height, because you could just put masking tape over them, I brought rocks that we can kind of drop into there.
Yeah, drop one in there.
And what's nice about Quickcrete is that it will solidify in about, it starts to harden, I should say, in about 15 minutes. And so for our example, I even like held it for 5 minutes in place, just kind of loosely, and it started to harden enough that I could let go. So it does harden in 15 minutes. You can't mix it up and wait a long time.
Okay.
But it's wonderful how smooth the edges are. And then you're done. And so this is an example of one that I made last night that I started to open this morning. And so I kind of just would peel off all of my containers, the same ones we use.
That's so
And I did have to kind of work to pop this out. I have a rock in it still. And I wasn't super careful with this when I did it, but you can start to break off the extra concrete, and then sandpaper will get it to be nice and smooth the way that my little other guy is. Then you win. You can do that in a variety of sizes.
Winning.
That's awesome.
Yes, but it is nice when you can kind of tape it down a little bit instead of just using rocks, but that's what you get to use today.
Or hold it. Find a Christy Larson to hold it for 5 minutes.
Yes. So Chris, what we're going to have you do is a marbled planter, and our examples are these blue ones here, kind of indigo dyed things, and marbling are both really popular. You're seeing that in home decor as well. What I poured into this guy here is some just really plain old cheap acrylic paint. And we want to thin it out just a teeny tiny bit with some water. And so I'm going to mix this up, and then we're going to go for it. I just realized I should put gloves on too. But we want this to just be a little bit thinner so that it'll be easier to roll with our acrylic paint. And you could mix this up a little bit more than what I'll do here. But it's really nice to use this on terracotta pots because it adheres to it so nicely, the way that our examples are. But you could do this even on plastic pots too, and mix it around. And so we have a little bit more liquidy white, and then I'm gonna let you go ahead and just use at least 2 of those and dump in a fair amount of it. We kind of want to go
Put your gloves on, Ashley.
Yeah, you're right. I got them in my pocket.
I'm just the reminder.
Thank you.
As I'm holding my concrete over here.
Yes, that's great. And then you can use another color too. And this project is super forgiving. The first time I did it with our bigger one here, I was like, oh, that looks terrible. And it was way too white. It didn't really have this marbleness going on at all. And I'll set these kind of just on our side here, you bet. And then you can use a skewer, and we're just gonna kind of like mix these together and marble it. So you can go back and forth, and you'll see those colors start to mix a little bit. What's nice is we didn't use too much water with this, and so the dark paint isn't sinking the way that it did when I made my first one. So this is winning so far. And we don't need to combine them super intensely. That is perfect. And I'll steal your stick here, and I'll do one, and then I'll let you go for it.
Underwater like seaweed, doesn't it?
It's kind of pretty. It's like lake
life,
like right? That? Yes. And so this is why you want to wear gloves, is because your hands are going to get pretty painty. You're going to go ahead and kind of just dip this in. And then I'll let you do it with the other one here. And you'll see this really cool pattern that starts to happen.
Wow.
And then you can either choose to just set it down right away. Otherwise, what I want to do is kind of like I can hold it, and then I can start to guide the paint to go in different directions. And you can go ahead and do the same thing that I did there. And what's cool is your pattern that's in there starts to keep changing as you do more pots. And so this is one where I think it's really fun to do more than one and have a few terracotta pots all together.
Look how cool and striped his looks.
I really like it. So here's the trick, is it won't exactly stay striped because you're going to set it down. But one thing you could do is set it down for like 2 minutes, and then you could flip it over, and then the paint will start to go up and down.
Drip a different way.
Right, it'll drip in really fun ways. I would just recommend not leaving it on its top like this. You want it to end upright so that you don't have this rough edge that I got from the way the paint dried. And so that is the end of that one.
Got it.
You could also seal it if you want with shellac or some other type of sealer as well.
Very cool.
And then we're going to move on to our fabric planters. We're going to make some space because space is always tricky with crafting.
Yes.
This only requires Mod Podge, some fabric, which I cut down to be about the circumference of our planter, of our terracotta pot in here. And so what I love about these is I see like fabric pots sometimes, or fabric buckets that you can pot a plant in, and this is an easy way to do it at home with your scrap fabric.
Right.
And so you're going to go ahead and apply a pretty generous layer of Mod Podge just to the rim right now.
Okay.
And it's all just scrap fabric. It's more of an indoor one that I would recommend doing, unless if you wanted to seal this, you could do like maybe 2 or 3 layers of Mod Podge over this.
Ooh, this Mod Podge smells like really strong glue.
Which is why we'll have a cocktail next, because it's just kind of fun, I don't know, fun to combine those things.
Got Mod Podge not on.
That is no problem. And so when you have this nice generous layer going on, the terracotta can soak up some of this, and so that's why we don't want it to be too thin. It's nice if it's a little bit even though, because as it dries under your fabric, some of it will look a little bit darker in places if we have super uneven Mod Podge going on, but it's still not a big deal because you'll still apply extra layers of Mod Podge over it at the end of it all.
Okay.
Awesome, that's perfect.
Yeah,
and
nice.
so we're gonna roll it with enough at the top. Yep, what you're doing is perfect, so that we can still flip some over it later. And then you're kind of gonna hold it and keep it taut as you do that, and just kind of keeping your fabric straight.
That's a lot of jobs at once, Ashley.
You're doing really good though. This is great. And this is also a forgiving one because before that Mod Podge dries, you could adjust it a little bit as you go. And it is nice with this one to wear gloves because as you pat it down a little bit, you'll need to keep it nice and straight and not too much. And there's a variety of ways, and we won't go through them right now, that you can cut little slits in here to keep it flatter and your pattern upright, and then you win. It's pretty awesome.
Another win.
Man, we are just winning.
Yes. Very last, we are doing a late night craft party this Thursday night with a bunch of Midwestern projects. But we always do craft and cocktails together on late night craft parties. And this is just a cocktail I wanted to show really quick with proof coffee liqueur. And we'll kind of just do it in between our really wet planters.
Is this the coffee that
It
you
is.
dump in? Okay.
So you can go ahead and fill it up just close to the top there.
Okay. Boy, that coffee smells good.
Right? It's from a Keurig, so it's not super fancy. And then
have
you
said
can pop that open and just top it off. So if you wanted to like garden on a Saturday and you wanted like a fun coffee cocktail, this is so good. And you just dump it in like you did. And then I like to add just a little bit of a creamer to it. And then you'd be super set to be crafting with your planters and your cocktail with coffee in it, so that you can stay caffeinated while you create.
And if people want to sign up for any of your crafting events at Unglued, where should they go?
Just ungluedmarket.com.
Well, bam.
And then you win more.
Can't you just see Auntie Ashley having a couple of cocktails? She's out in her garden just talking to her plants.
Just-
Like, oh, you guys look so good.
You guys okay? You're okay, right? Yeah.
Please grow.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Where can we come see you at?
Yeah, we'll be at our shop on Broadway and at Prairie Den for our next late night craft party. Woohoo! Thank you guys.
All right, stay with us. Much more coming up right here on North Dakota Today.